Welcome to the party. I'm not here right now, but I want you to listen very carefully. These guys are very funny, so pay attention. Enough talk. It's showtime.
Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name's Steve, my co-host is Pete.
Hello.
This episode we are going to be talking about a very classic film that somehow we've still not covered, from 1987, right in our sweet spot, Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, I'm not sure how there are 57 other films worthy of being discussed first.
well, we'll come on to that.
Jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle bell rock.
Our Christmas film this year, because it is a Christmas film.
It is, and that is the opening song.
Yes, it is.
The film. And the closing song.
At least 3 times in the film it's referenced, so it must be a Christmas film.
Yeah.
So when did you first see this film?
I'm not sure, because it came out when I was 13 or 14. I remember when I first saw the second one.
Right.
I don't remember if it was on VHS, kids, or if it might have even been when it was first on TV. But if that was the case, it was probably edited like crazy. What about you?
So I would have been 10 when this came out, so I did not see it at the cinema, that's for sure, when it came out, even though I was told I'd probably get in. It must have been on TV. It must have been, they showed it, probably at Christmas, around that time, and I saw it then. I think I may have gone... I think I saw the second one on DVD, or wouldn't have been video, probably been by 89. We wanted DVD rentals then, weren't we? Blockbuster.
I know how I saw the second one. It was back in the days when you'd get. This is not kind. It's like gentle piracy, where a friend of yours who had Sky Movies would VHS tape films that you wanted and then lend them to you.
Right.
That's how I saw the second one.
Oh, okay. But yes, I remember the first time this came out. It was in that era where there were a lot of buddy cop films. You had...
48 Hours?
Yeah. I was going to say the kind of Beverly Hills Cop thing as well, with Eddie Murphy teaming up with the two. But it's still, the buddy cop thing. 48 Hours. What else? You've got Die Hard, I guess. Kind of a buddy cop film with him and Al. So there's lots of this odd couple pairings.
This has kind of become... watching it again, though, there's so much from this film that other films have used since.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many tropes that have... that are almost established in this film. Mm-hmm. So I suppose, they wouldn't be Rush Hour without this.
No. Nope.
They wouldn't. Tango and Cash, I guess, was a couple of years after this. That's another one, isn't it?
Yeah. Stallone and Kurt Russell, which we've done. We've done Tango and Cash.
Apparently, the first ever buddy cop film was a Japanese film called Stray Dog, Kurosawa film from everything seems to come from Kurosawa. from 1949.
Wow.
Starring Toshiro Mifune and Takashi Shimura.
Well done.
The original first. They weren't too bad. No. I don't know. It could be completely wrong. I've got no...
But you tried.
There's no one here to correct me. No. The Buddy Cox genre... Buddy Cox? That's a completely different type of film. Shane Black's Buddy Cox. Yeah. The Buddy Cop genre reached its apex when Lethal Weapon made its theatrical debut, according to Wikipedia. It's apex.
Well, so it's written by Shane Black. It's directed by Richard Donner, or Dick Donner, as his mate.
The fabulous Dick Donner.
I mean, even to the point... this film has got so many, as you say, it's been influenced so many things. But the other thing that I find really quite sweet is that even to this day, Mel Gibson and his nibs Danny Glover are still mates. And a couple of years ago, I think it may have been last year, Dick Donner got awarded this special award for being a director and all the rest of it. And the two of them got up on the podium and talked about him and shooting the original Lethal Weapon film. It's on YouTube, I think you can see it.
Okay.
And the two of them are cracking jokes and talking and just kind of reminiscing whilst talking about working with Dick on the films. And you can see the kind of camaraderie between the two of them that built up over the years. And in this film, obviously it's in the script. Obviously it's Shane Black, and he's so good at that kind of odd man out, working with a straight guy kind of thing. But there was something very charismatic and something really convincing about their strange friendship.
You do, but because the kind of all their poles apart, and then they will eventually. You always, that's the trope, isn't it? It's like they're so different, but eventually they'll be friends. But it's usually one's by the. There's more to this than just on the surface. It's like one's by the book and a career cop, and one's kind of a maverick, which is the standard thing.
Yeah.
But it's much more about this guy is a family man, and this guy has lost his wife and has got no one.
He's lost his family. He's desperate for a new one. And
so there's without sounding pretentious, there's a more emotional depth to the characters in this, I think, than in a lot of similar films.
Because Murtaugh's family become his surrogate family. Because we're going to spoil this film anyway. We always do. So when they get kidnapped, when they take Murtaugh's daughter, and even before that, I think is it in this film or is it in the second one? He goes crazy and he. No, it's the second one where she's filming something, and Riggs goes crazy because he thinks it's real, and kind of flips the guy. But so in this film, when Murtaugh's daughter gets kidnapped, he's raging and he's bottling up inside, and he's absolutely furious because he's been to their house, he's met them, he's talked to them, he likes Murtaugh, he likes his wife and kids, and he just wants to protect them because he couldn't protect his own. And they bond.
And it is that age-old thing that they have to become more like each other. But again, in this film, it works. Murtaugh has to break out from being like the safe older cop. Although I don't think he was 50 when he played the part. I'm sure he wasn't, because by the end he's as angry and as kind of outside, and as like out for blood as much as Riggs. Because it's got personal as much as Riggs is. But actually, by the end, also Riggs is kind of it's a bit of cliche where he's dressing smarter, but he's being a little bit more by the book, and they kind of meet in the middle somewhere. And I think that's I think it works really, really well. And obviously Joel Silver is kind of the of that time anyway, the ultimate kind of action producer as well.
Yeah.
But it's the fact this film is 31 years old, because it doesn't feel 31 years old sitting watching it.
Not at all. Not at all.
And it's it's a nice reminder that before Mel Gibson kind of became a problematic personality, shall we say, that he was just so good in so many films. I think in terms of a movie star, I think late 80s, early 90s, I don't think anyone could touch him personally.
Oh no! You go back and look at all the things he's done. Because the first thing I saw him was Mad Max, and that was 79. Yeah. And then the follow-ons from there, and then he did things like
Ransom, Conspiracy Theory.
Yeah, and he just went on in Air America and all sorts of these things. And then, of course, we saw him in things like Signs later on.
Yeah.
And, just really... And then he started going to the direction, doing more directing himself, and he did some really unusual films.
He's on the path almost to be like the modern-day Clint Eastwood in that way. Because, let's have a look. Yeah.
Braveheart and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So, he was, at this point, he was not a huge star. He'd done some films, he'd got some stuff behind him, he was building, and I think what some people still forget is that at this point, he was, I don't want to say unknown, but we didn't know a lot about him as a person. It wasn't, this is the other thing, back when this film came out,
you didn't know anything about anyone.
No, you didn't. You didn't know anything about anybody. You couldn't go and look it up. You couldn't just Google it. There was no such thing as Google in 87. And so it was a case of, okay, let's see what this guy does. And it was all about the performance. It wasn't about what you've read in the headlines. And he was really, really good in the role. He was convincing.
He had a run across 12 years from this. Well, actually, longer than that, because he'd done 3 Mad Maxes before this, don't forget.
Yes, that's right.
He did this, Tequila Sunrise, Lethal Weapon 2, Bird on a Wire.
That's so good.
Yeah, it is. It's a great film. Yeah. Air America, Hamlet, Lethal Weapon 3, Forever Young, Man Without a Face, Maverick. I think I'm the only person who absolutely loves that film.
It's all right. It's all right.
Braveheart.
Yep.
He was in Casper, but uncredited.
Okay.
A couple of things I've never heard of. Ransom, Conspiracy Theory.
Good film.
Lethal Weapon 4, and Payback. That's a 12-year run.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot of films, and... really grew him in the eyes of the audience.
Yeah. And all, again, in that kind of... They're all quality films in their own way as well.
Yeah. So, we know that Riggs is a loose cannon. He comes in, he has to kind of get on with with Murtaugh, who doesn't like him. He's getting ready to retire. I don't think I'd seen that before. The fact that where one partner is basically ready to kind of hang up his boots. He wants to just go and he's done and just kind of get through the last few days. So that was a new thing for me. I hadn't really seen that before when this
Do you think that's part of the reason that they paired them together? Do you think, as I was trying to work out why they'd chosen Murtaugh, and I don't know if it is because it's the end of his career, so this guy's probably not going to last anyway. So or is it because he's such a safe pair of hands if anyone could actually stop him?
I think it's the latter, yeah. That if there's anybody that can get through to Riggs that can actually make sense. Because there's a cracking scene, actually, it's quite short in the first film, where they're in between things. And this shows you how old the film is. I love this bit. They're on an overpass over a freeway somewhere. Yeah. And Murtaugh is talking to the psychiatrist back at the police station. And he's on a mobile phone. Now, the mobile phone looks like a small suitcase with a giant phone connected to it on a huge wire with
looks
a big aerial.
He's in Vietnam.
It does. That's the mobile phone then. And he basically calls back, and the psychologist is saying, he's in pain, he's dangerous, he's unstable, and Murtaugh's like, oh, great, thanks, and he said, what do I do? Because what if he goes off? You don't want to be anywhere near him. And he's like, oh, thank you very much, Doctor, you've been most helpful.
What I'd forgotten, because when you see that scene, it looks like, Murtaugh's there on his own.
Yeah.
But then he turns around and Riggs is just sat on the front of his car.
Eating French fries.
And you'd think with a phone that big, he could probably hear every word.
No.
But one thing I noticed, I'm assuming that it was deliberate, is the start of this film and the start of The Nice Guys are really similar. Because you start here, you've got a woman who's undressed and then falls to her death. And then in Nice Guys, you've got the woman who crashes and then falls and is naked. Mm-hmm. Or maybe Shane Black just likes that, but it felt a bit like he was giving a nod to his own thing.
Yeah.
The other thing here, I thought, Christmas. We know Shane Black puts Christmas in everything, pretty much. But I've heard a few interviews with him where he says that, and they say, "Why'd you do it?" He says, "Because it's universal." He says, "Because everyone knows what Christmas is, and it's a time of family and stuff, and it means, it's." People are closer together, so it kind of makes the jeopardy bigger. But also, there's birthdays become a theme across this series of films. Because Murtaugh turns 50, I think, at the start of the film.
Yep.
But again, it instantly makes you kind of relate to the people. The other thing, which I had remembered, but I needed reminding from watching it again, is that the music in this series of films is so part of the movie.
Oh yeah.
Michael Kamen and Eric Clapton. And they have different songs in the different films, a bit like Rocky, I guess. But the actual kind of the themes and stuff, and it's the only acceptable use of saxophone outside of soft pornography, and the Lost Boys. Which actually, the other thing, sorry, saying Lost Boys has just reminded me, which I thought was at one point they walked past the cinema, which is showing the Lost Boys.
Nice,
I thought that's two of the best films from that time period. Potentially, no spoilers yet, but even things like being, it doesn't help that I saw Loaded Weapon, which obviously and lots of parodies around the time of this. So like the him being on the beach with his dog and him drinking too much and potentially going to kill himself became a trope in other action films, but it also became a trope in things sending up action films. But you believe it here, and there's very Shane Black lines.
Oh yeah, there's lots of
from both of them as well. All dressed up and no one to blow, I think was the first one I noticed.
Yes, he has a certain way with words.
He does.
Yes. We haven't talked about the big man in this film, who later on, and we've already talked about some of the other films he's been in, he became a bit of a, I don't want to say joke, but a bit of a jokey character. But in this, Gary Busey's actually quite terrifying as Joshua.
Yes, he is.
He's the kind of, there's the general who's, he is the protagonist, but...
Kind of.
Well, I think, the general is the main guy behind everything. He's the brains. But Joshua represents the dark half of Riggs, of what he could have done and what he could have become.
Yeah.
So you've got this guy who, like Riggs, went through the war, got lots of experience, came out, and he's very, very damaged. And what Joshua's done is he's signed up with someone else. He signed up with a general who believes in something else, who's smuggling drugs, who's carrying on a war, who's still killing people, and he's still fighting it on the streets. Whereas Riggs has tried to do something constructive. He came home, he left it all behind, he got married and became a cop to try and protect people and go on the right path. But then, of course, because of what happened to his wife, he's completely veered off. And so when he meets Joshua, they sort of know each other, which was always a surprise. The first time I watched it, I had no idea what was going on. I'm like, wait, how does he know him? Where's he from? Have they met? And that really confused me until I kind of watched it again and went, oh, okay. So there's this kind of unspoken thing between them.
Yeah, that in a way, it's a little bit unbelievable, but it kind of is okay, I think.
Yeah.
Because it is a slight contrivance, but I don't think it really matters in the grand scheme of things. It's interesting to say, because I'd seen Gary Busey in a straight-to-video revenge action movie that came out a year before this,
right? Where
he was the lead, and a film called Eye of the Tiger, which has nothing to do with Rocky at all.
Right.
Him and Yaphet Kotto were in that. We might have to do that one day, because I guarantee you haven't seen it.
I have not. But yeah, I have not.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
It better not be like that other thing you just made me watch the other day.
That also had Gary Busey, Surviving the Game. That was also Gary Busey.
Yeah, from now on, it was comedy at that point. No, it was
bad.
From
now on, I'm only going to pick Gary Busey films. That's my new thing.
Okay. But what did you think of him in this?
I thought in this he's very good. Again, he's a bit chewing the scenery. Under Siege, that's another one, isn't it? That's another one where he's kind of one of the villains.
Yeah.
But he's menacing. I mean, the first thing you see of him is the guy explaining to Ed Ross, of course.
Yeah.
If anyone's playing their Bags of Action bingo of reoccurring people that are in everything, you can tick off Ed Ross.
Sven, bing. Ed Ross, bing.
Yeah. And Al Young later as well.
Yep, of course.
If Ed Ross and Al Young are in the film, I probably really like it.
Yeah.
And it's the first thing you see is him basically allowing the main guy to burn his arm with a lighter
to prove his loyalty.
It's loyalty, yeah.
Yeah. Because he's mental. He's an absolute mentalist. He's in this. He looks quite terrifying. He's quite scary. He's quite very menacing, and he's proving the point that the general's men are loyal to him and they'll do whatever they say. But clearly he's unhinged. He loves killing. He loves fighting. You see the joy on his face where he thinks he's killed Riggs and he's pleased about it. It's all part of like a game to him.
Yeah. But I hadn't thought of the parallel between him and Riggs until you said it. But it's so there but Riggs is getting it from other things, like jumping off the roof with the guy.
Yes.
Like slapping himself in the face, like the Three Stooges.
Trying to get the guy to kill him.
When he's buying a Christmas tree. Yeah, it's the stuff. He does unhinged stuff, but in a different way.
Yeah. But it's, that's, if he went around killing people just willy-nilly, he'd be Joshua.
Yeah.
That's what he'd be. But if it wasn't for his wife and then for Murtaugh and everything else, he would have gone that way.
But I think I don't know. I'm obviously kind of guessing here, and obviously it's not real. But if he hadn't met Murtaugh, I don't think he'd have killed himself. But I think he'd have gone a darker path, like you said. Really, I think maybe he'd have gone a darker path in terms of what he was capable of doing, because his humanity kind of returns by the end of the film.
But it's because of the influence of other people around him. He needs those people around him, otherwise he just gets worse.
I think as well, I'm going to jump around, but like at the end, Murtaugh is like, kill him, just kill him, and he's gone the other way. And I almost think that snaps Riggs out of it.
Yeah.
It kind of was like, well, hang on, if this good, decent family man can be taken to where I am, actually arrest him. Rather, don't kill him, arrest him. Actually, we will meet in the middle.
Yeah, it's straightening them both out to some degree. That Murtaugh is slightly corrupted by Riggs, but by the end of it, you can't really blame him. They've kidnapped his daughter. They've supposedly already killed Riggs. They've beaten him up. They killed his daughter's boyfriend of all things. Which I still remember that scene where he goes, sure, right, he's probably blonde with big dimples. And then the voice on the other line goes, how do you know that, Sarge? Over. And you're like, what? It's hang on.
Again, though, it's the kind of wonderful writing of Shane Black, because when he's got pits in his face, now it's dimples, and that whole conversation, you think this is so throwaway, but it's also believable father and daughter stuff.
Yeah.
But it's also a plot point. It's also foreshadowing.
He smiles,
it's like,
he's got pits I can see through his face.
Yeah. I'm not convinced it was the same Shane Black that did the Predator film this year, but never mind.
I've seen that, but I may get to it at some point.
If only. Oh, Jake Busey's in that, so I could pick it.
I've got A. Busey. That's your rule.
And he's playing his son. He's playing Gary Busey from Predator 2's son. So, yeah.
Right, okay.
Every film now must have a son of a person from another film you've seen.
A. Busey of some kind.
Yeah. Beauties of Action. That's a new spin-off show on its way.
You do that one by yourself.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Just you sat in the room talking to yourself.
Yeah, I'll get Gary Busey on. It's fine.
Great. Anywho, so really good characters, really strong cast all the way round. Everybody in the Murtaugh family are really good actors, and the fact that they get the same people back in later films, I think, works really well. So the guy who plays Nick Murtaugh, and then the wife and the daughters. Is it Rianne? Is the girl who gets kidnapped?
Yeah.
But actress is Tracy Wolf, I want to say, maybe. Anyway, it all works really well. I like seeing the same sort of faces because it builds on that thing of family. That by the fourth film, that becomes like a parody almost.
Yeah,
they say we're family. And that it's like tuna scenes, but it never got to that in the first couple of films. It never overplayed itself, I think.
No, I think by like half an hour into this film, this is one of the great double acts. And I think interesting when we go on to the scores and stuff. I think this is a really strong film. The actual story itself is quite linear. It's quite straight up.
I'm
really.
right with that. Yeah,
it doesn't really push the boundaries, but in a way, I think this film is stronger for not being a standalone film. If that makes sense, because you do get things like the same music, you do get things like the same cast, and you do get because by the end of this film, they've got to know each other and they've kind of fixed rigs to a point.
Yeah,
but they felt to be honest with you, there's so many films that I would be more than happy, especially these days, if they didn't have a sequel. Making a good film should be enough. But I think this is one of the Die Hard. They didn't need Die Hard on its own is enough. Predator on its own, arguably now, is enough. but actually, with this, I think although there's some missteps along the four films, I think it works really well by carrying on. Because it's about this relationship and about this family, and you get to know more about Murtaugh and his family as Riggs does as well.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I watched this on face value of one film, but I guess in my head, I already knew these characters really well.
Right.
I think it's one of the harder ones to go back and revisit objectively, because you do kind of, like you say, we've known these characters for 30 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
What I found particularly interesting was that, like these days, you have very straight, serious action films, and you have action comedies that are out-and-out action comedies.
Yeah.
This is a straight film with some very funny moments. I guess it's the Shane Black kind of thing. But you don't get many of those films anymore. I think if there's going to be humour, they go so arch with it that it robs the dramatic scenes of any real power. But real life isn't always funny. Real life isn't always serious. It's both. And sometimes at the same time, and sometimes straight after each other. And I think that again, in the grand scheme of everything, this is not a kitchen sink drama, but it's a believable human story in amongst all the kind of crazy gun stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, because if you get a Rock and Kevin Hart film, it's slapstick shooting, running around, tee-hee one-liners, that kind of thing. Whereas if you get like a Liam Neeson action film, it's going to be quite grim, and there's going to be lots of bodies, and he's not going to be cracking one-liners with, a pal. It's going to be a lot darker. But you don't get that somewhere between the two anymore.
I think Two Guns and, to a lesser extent, Hitman's Bodyguard are probably two films that have kind of bridged that gap.
I think Two Guns is more comedic. It leaks. I think So I think Lethal Weapon, as you say, is a straight film with some comedy. I think Two Guns is a comedy film that leans into the dark a bit more, because it starts with them having funny one-liners and comedic conversation. I mean, there are some very dark moments in Two Guns, but for the most part, the tone is very light. The way that the two characters interact, but it's another good partnership. It's another good partnership.
I know what you mean, though. Like, you don't necessarily get a sense of any real jeopardy.
No.
So in here, even though I've seen 4 films with these characters in, I know they're going to be absolutely fine. I still don't particularly feel comfortable watching Mel Gibson or watching Riggs get electrocuted. No, it still feels very visceral.
You've got, Murtaugh tied to a chair who's already been shot in the arm, and they're punching him, and they're literally putting salt in the wound. It's it's really unpleasant, while his daughter's isn't she like handcuffed watching or something?
Yeah, in a kind of underwear.
And then in the other room you've got Riggs, who's being electrocuted to death by our mate Al Young, and it's really nasty. It's not like they're gonna suddenly wink to camera. It doesn't. And
it's not. None of it's really justified. It's like they want to know what they know, but they might not know anything, or they could just kill them really quickly. And actually, he says to Riggs, which is Joshua says, we've actually got him and his daughter. We don't actually need to do this to you, but I just want to.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and it shows how cracked he is in the head.
Yeah. And Al Young is quite apologetic almost until he's strangled.
Yes, he goes, "Sorry, pal, nothing personal," and then of course Riggs kills him and snaps his neck with his legs, as you do,
As you do.
Yeah.
But I think there are some, and this is another Shane Black thing, and I think it's noticing things like Iron Man 3 is using kids to humanize moments or make them funnier. Mm-hmm. So you've got a bit of the house where the Rian is kind of very awkwardly flirting with Riggs.
Yeah.
And talking, and kind of looking at him in kind of a teenage way. And then the younger brother and sister start beatboxing and rapping about it. And then Murtaugh joins in and isn't very good. And I thought that was really funny. I'd forgotten how funny that is. And then one of my favourite scenes is when they interview the kids. So they've gone to Dixie. Is it Dixie, the prostitute's house?
Yep.
And they're like, you come to get Dixie? And they're just, the kids are so funny. Don't tell him your name, Alfred. It's essentially, that's a line from Dad's Army. I mean, these are old jokes, but it's so funny. Mm. It's so funny. And that's why you do find out they know each other, because the tattoo is the same. The tattoo is the same as on Mr. Joshua's arm.
Yes,
that's where right. that. But again, it's a plot point. It's a visual cue, but it's done in a funny scene. And
very quick. You're going to blink and miss it.
And it's not long after the shooting range scene, which again is where you kind of realise that the lethal weapon is Riggs. Mm-hmm. After he shoots the smiley face on the
target.
On the target.
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to do that.
Is that your goal in life?
It's
Shoot things on targets.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Yeah.
And go on. And other things, just like I said, the plot is quite linear and quite straightforward. But actually, the fact that this whole thing isn't about the daughter of Murtaugh's friend, you think for most of the film that it's something to do with her, but it's basically because of her father, and he's protecting himself, really.
Yeah. The
whole Shadow Company kind of heroin thing.
Yep.
And that everything is a front. It's all a front, and they're both of them being used. But then, Mr. Joshua has turned up at that point and killed to death. So Mr. Joshua is basically killing everyone you meet in this film at some point.
Yep.
Will pretty much be killed by Mr. Joshua.
It's true. Yeah, even Riggs gets killed by him. It's just as the film goes on, it did kind of get the pace builds and builds and builds, and then towards the end, there's little funny moments like right at the end when Joshua comes back to the house and drives the car through the front.
Yeah,
there's a sign on the Christmas tree. Have you noticed?
No, I didn't.
That says, "Dear bad guys" or something. There's no one here signed the Murtaughs, I think it says. It's like a post-it that's stuck to a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
That then he goes through, and then of course Riggs turns up right next to him. But there's little things like that what day is it? Goddamn Christmas! With a machine gun. All this kind of stuff on Christmas on the television. Is it Wonderful Life or something that's playing?
Yeah.
So there's things like that. That's classic Shane Black and stuff. But and then you get the big fight between Joshua and Riggs.
Yeah, and I think as well leading up to that, because again, I'd said before about like foreshadowing and things that are going to pay off. But what I also like is they kind of trick you a bit, because there's a lot of talk about how Riggs is this ace marksman, and he can make this shot that only like 5 people in the world can make.
Yeah.
So when Murtaugh is being very out of character with this hand grenade, and being very Riggs.
He is.
Just, I've got this hand grenade, It's like, you wouldn't have done this an hour ago. The fact that Riggs is there with the gun, although if you check the runtime, you're going to work it out. But it's like, okay, he's going to do it. But he doesn't. He gets stopped before he can take the shot. And it kind of changes. It's interesting. It almost goes from being a cop film to almost like an army film for about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Because it is, it becomes a war. And it accelerates really quickly, actually. It does go from kind of people in their houses and chatting to kids to torture in the desert at breakneck speed, really.
He takes out a couple before the general stops him. And then, because that's when Joshua goes, where's it coming from? Where's it coming from? And Joshua goes, damn it, it's Riggs. So he knows. He knows that the only person who could do this from this far away is Riggs. So something hasn't gone right and that Riggs is still alive. So he knows that. But the general obviously suspected something because he turns up and goes, don't try it, son. Even you're not that fast. So as you're right, it becomes like an army film and stuff. So, yeah, it really... But that fight in the rain... It's a classic thing. There again, people have parodied it so many times.
The running, or chipping, of
Riggs.
Of Riggs with the gun on his back. That's so iconic as well.
Yeah.
That's not really any less iconic than kind of like the white vest kind of Die Hard stuff.
True.
But he's just absolutely bombing down the street. And the two things in films that should always be in the rain are funerals and fights on the street.
Yes.
That's where Rocky V went wrong. It didn't rain.
One of many things.
Okay.
Many things.
And a distinct lack of Gary Busey.
Yeah, clearly. And Sven Ollie Thornton. Otherwise, it would have been great. Maybe that should have been instead of Tommy Gunn. Should have got Sven Ollie as the trainer. Anyway, so that fight in the rain is brilliant. Absolute classic. And the slow-mo bit was a real surprise the first time I saw it. I never saw that coming.
And I thought it wasn't something that was used in those kind of scenes at the time, I don't think. These days, you're used to either quick cuts or slow-mo. So, but it's like they're hammering each other with their fists, they're kicking each other, they're hitting each other with posts. And it's like his face. And what I love about it is like he gets pushed down into the water. So he's got Riggs's face basically in a puddle.
Yeah.
He's kind of pushing his
Trying to drown him in a puddle.
And that's the point where, because in fact, this fight existing is a sign again of how Murtaugh has changed, because they could arrest him. They've got him. There's police with guns on him. They've got him. They're ready to take him out.
Cops, I'm so this guy's just killed 4 cops. And so they let him have this fight, which is, it's silly, but okay, I'm going with it. And
it lets it happen, and then he's been pushed down. And then Roger's almost like, well, actually, you know what? He's going to kill my partner here.
Yeah.
And so he's he's like, don't shoot him, Rog. And that's very Riggs. And in the first film, you're almost like, oh, come on, just chill out. And then over the films, you just kind of know the bits that make him unhinged are also the bits that make him really good. Because he comes back and he's like pinning his legs around his neck. There's a lot of he's very good at this legs around the neck maneuver. He does it a lot in this film.
Yes, choking maneuvers.
And I really like the fact that no one has to tell Riggs he's not worth it. He says it himself.
Yeah.
He says he's not worth it, because the cliche is always like, don't do it, he's not worth it. But he just comes to that himself and says, you lose.
Good.
And because, like you said before, it is a game, and he just basically goes, well, you lose, so it doesn't really matter what happens now because you've lost. But of course, he grabs the gun from the police because he doesn't want to lose.
Well, he's not going to go to prison. There's no way Joshua's going to go to prison.
He's like Bodhi. He's like Bodhi at the end of Point Break. It's like, I can't survive the cage, man.
Thank God he doesn't say that in that voice.
That's my patented Bodhi voice.
Okay.
So, yeah. And then they both shoot him. And my favourite thing, which I think just cements the whole of this story together, is Murtaugh kind of catches Riggs.
Yes.
And is holding him up, and he says, I've got you, partner. Which is corny, but considering all the way through, it's like, this guy is my partner. This is just this guy that I've got to look after to end my career. That's the moment where that friendship is, and that professional relationship is completely cemented.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's a lovely moment. It makes a little tear to your eye.
I always also like the fact in that scene where when they shoot Joshua and he falls over and he's handcuffed to the cop, you see the cop go over with him.
Yeah.
Noticed, because the first time I watched it, because they always do that when when they jump off the roof, they're clearly not handcuffed together. You can see that they're not. The two stuntmen aren't because it'd be too dangerous. But in this bit where he falls over, Joshua pulls the policeman over, and it just makes me laugh every time I see it. It's a good scene. Yeah, and a great touching end. But it's the little bits that make me laugh now, watching it 25, 30 years on from the first time I saw it.
And I think, again, it's almost even funnier because you know the characters later. It was quite nice. God, you know what? I've forgotten how they met.
Yeah.
And kind of what it was like for them not to be these two inseparable guys.
Yeah, because he flips him the first time he sees him in the police station. He thinks that Riggs is some kind of dodgy guy.
Yeah.
And he pins him and he goes, "Oh, Roger, here's your new partner." I'm too old for this shit. Which, there again, everyone's parodied so many times.
Well, I think as well, because I don't know if you know that I've listened to a few interviews that Richard Donner didn't want a black actor in the second lead.
Really?
I don't know for any specific reason, but he just didn't think it would work, and it had to be talked into it. I believe that's correct from what I've heard, anyway. But what I really like about this film, and again watching it now with kind of 2018 eyes, is in most films at the time we talked about the buddy cop thing. The one who seems like he may not belong, or the one who's the outsider, or is a bit rough and ready, or maybe he's dodgy, tended to be the black character.
Yep.
But actually here, the family guy. In fact, there's a lot. There's a lot of people in high positions in the police in this film that are black, and the person who looks like he could be a criminal, and the person he thinks is actually a perp rather than a policeman, is Riggs, is the white guy, and I think that's still powerful now, which it shouldn't be. But when you think it was 1987,
yeah, and
it's actually a big deal.
The other thing is, they never refer to the fact that Murtaugh's black. It's not a feature. He didn't come from the street like they normally do. That thing of, I grew up on the street, but I got in the straight and narrow, and now I'm a cop. It's like, no. He's just a cop. That's it. We're not focusing on that. We're not talking about it. It's not a plot point. And as you say, Riggs is the one you'd think would be the one who's the straight arrow, and he's not. He's the mess. He's the one that needs help and needs Murtaugh and his family to put him back together.
But I think it's nice. It's considering that still doesn't always happen. It's good to see in a film from this long ago, really.
Yeah, it's quite telling in a way. Yeah, watching it now, I still really enjoy it. Not just the script and the kind of comedy stuff and the Shane Blackness of it that we've seen in many other films. This film is a classic of its time, and it's still a classic now that everyone still copies and imitates because it did something so well.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
Are we ready to do some scores?
I think we are.
Enough with the yak. What is your score?
I'm happy to go first if you're okay.
Okay, yes, yes, that's fine. Yes.
Okay, yes. So, I pretty much know this film word for word. I have seen it so many times. It set up this great partnership that continued from the three films and a great friendship between the two actors. We've seen other great film partnerships that we've talked about, some of the other ones, 48 Hours and so on, and so that sort of thing. And I think this is probably my favourite on-screen film partnership in like a buddy cop film. It just works. There's something about it. And as the story goes on and as the films go on and we learn more about them, some of the films are varying quality. But what I always like is the scenes between Mel Gibson and Danny Glover, to the point where I think it might even be the fourth film. There's a great scene where Gibson's having a fight with this big young cop, like training, and he pretends that he's put his shoulder out, which we didn't talk about in this. And it isn't, he hasn't nothing to do with that at all. He stops and pretends, oh no, I've hurt my shoulder. And Murtaugh's like, oh, do you want to go? And he goes, no, I need to stop. And he goes, why? He goes, because that guy's killing me. He's really, really young and he's beat me. And there's a great moment where Murtaugh goes, finally. Because Riggs has finally got to the point where he was in the first film, where he was too old for it. And now Riggs is too old for it.
If you follow that logic through from the age, then I think it makes Murtaugh 85. It's not 85, but he's 50 at the start of the first film and ready to retire.
He's probably like 65 by the time, this kind of comes
if not, at least.
Yeah, everyone's grown up a lot. But it's just that great twist where suddenly Riggs has now become the old man who's been overpowered by much, much younger guys, and he can't keep up and he can't do it. So I just like that kind of the development of their friendship, if not over the whole of, the films aren't brilliant, some of them, and there's some weak bits. Joe Pesci.
Yeah, I agree.
But looking at this film by itself as a whole, as the start of the franchise and the kind of thing from 1987, really, really good, really enjoy it, and still worth your time today. So I think I have to give it 5 bags. I don't think there's anything I don't like about this film.
There you are.
What about you?
Very similar, I don't have much to say because it's just kind of, for me, there's Predator, Die Hard, and this really are the 3 kind of benchmarks in many ways. I agree with you I think there's some things I like more about Last Boy Scout, which is a film I didn't like when I first saw it because I was too young and too stupid. It's true. But just, like you say, it sets up so much. It is, I smile every time I see the 2 of them on screen.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always work. Like Long Kiss Goodnight, I struggle with. So that the Shane Black formula and a buddy thing isn't always enough. It needs more than that. And no, I'm going to agree with you. I think this is one of the classic action films of all time.
Yeah.
Often followed and rarely bettered. And like you say, the quality across the 4 films a little up and down. It's actually not that they're only over 11 years. The 4 films. I thought it was a bigger gap actually. So he'd have been 61. Oof. I'd actually quite like to see. I don't think it'll happen because I don't think Mel Gibson will get a film of this size, unfortunately, anymore. But I think I'd love to see a 5th one now.
Really?
I think I would. Having watched this again, I think I would if they could do it right. But would they? Would they make it in this way, that middle ground? They probably wouldn't. It probably would be a comedy.
3 was getting comedic. Yeah. 4 was leaning into the comedy.
Is
more.
Chris Rock in from 3 or from 4?
Oh, I can't even remember. That's that shows you. Chris Rock is in 4.
Does Donna direct them all though? Because that's rare. I think Donna does direct them all.
Yeah, he directed 4.
Yeah, so that's
1998.
By Joe Pesci, obviously, a lot of people like that character because he's on the poster in the 3rd one.
Sadly,
the only good thing about him being in that film is I have something to say every time I go to the drive-through. That's the only thing I've taken away.
Right.
Although it's the TV version, which is they screw you at the drive-through, but he doesn't say that in the actual film.
No, he does not.
He uses a bad word. He uses a bad word, boys and girls.
And all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Die Hard.
Yes. Mother Funkster.
Have you watched The Good Place?
I haven't.
Right.
I haven't.
It's not a spoiler.
I should.
But in the TV program, The Good Place, they can't swear. The characters can't swear. So one of them says, "Motherfucking shirt," and she's like, "Shirt. Why can't I say shirt? Oh, fuck me." And so it's that kind of thing that every time a film like Lethal Weapon or Die Hard gets put onto TV, they dub it so you'd get that kind of. Oh, fuck.
That's one of the fun things about having become a parent is that you suddenly become the dub version of the films you like in your everyday life. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to watch Good Place. It's very funny. I think you'll get more from it now. But yes, Lethal Weapon 3, I think 2 is really good. There's some problems with 2, not major. 3 and 4,
when I worked in radio, I directed a voice session with Joss Ackland,
right?
In North Devon because he lives in North Devon, and I was a bit kind of starstruck, and I was just before I met him, I was mumbling under my breath, diplomatic immunity, but I was too scared to say it to him properly.
Don't say it.
No, he'd be like, I've never heard that before. Yeah.
Oh, Pete.
It's like when my dad went to the shop in Beamish, which for any of you who haven't been to, you probably know Beamish, do you? It's a recreation of the olden times in the northeast, and it's a town, and there's a little shop in it, and my dad went in and asked for 4 candles, and the guy pulled out 4 candles, and he was like, oh, and he went, how did you do it? No, I was going to say it. He said, because about 50 people say it every day.
Oh, brilliant.
And my dad was like, but no, it's really funny, and I thought of it.
Turns out, no. Everybody's already done it 100 times.
It's for anyone under the age of 30 and anyone that's not from the UK. That's a reference to the 2 Ronnies.
Yes, there you go. Well done.
There you go. Which is also Christmassy. There's nothing more Christmassy than Shane Black films, the 2 Ronnies, and Morecambe and Wise, and Strongman. They're Christmas for me.
Absolutely. So, right, we've rambled on long.
We have.
So, have you seen Lethal Weapon? If you haven't, what?
I nearly said yes then, but I have.
Exactly. What's wrong with you? Go and watch the first one. You'll love it. Second one is good. Third one, if you've got time. The fourth one, I just skip bits.
And the fifth one is in my mind.
Well, there's the two versions of the TV series now.
That's true. Which is probably the reason it won't happen as another film.
Do the TV series, and then the main actor got cut from series 2, and we got a new actor for series 3.
And then the other one quit.
Yeah, so that's kind of dead after series 3, I would guess. But hey ho,
yeah,
there you go.
And that's weird because it's Damon Wayans playing Murtaugh.
Yes,
who was in
Bulletproof
and Last Boy Scout. So it's like he's moved from one Shane Black character to another.
Yeah, that's strange. Anyway. Wrap us up, Pete.
It's good. No, it's not good night from me or good night from him. Although it does work because you mentioned the two Ronnies. Thank you for listening, if indeed you still are.
Good night.
You have been listening to Bags of Action. No bullshit. You'd better stick around for the next episode, because if you're lying, I'll be back.